Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Club podcast, where every month we deep dive into a different aspect of cinema, directors, genres, actors, or franchises. It doesn't matter, because it's always fun at the Film Club. I'm Dean.
I'm Becky.
And this month we're talking about horror comedies, and this week we're talking about...
Beetlejuice?
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 We have summoned her.
We summoned Yasmin.
Yes.
I'm here.
Welcome back.
You're so excited.
I'm so excited. I'm always excited to be here.
Well, yeah, because last time you tortured her with Blue Velvet.
I still think you didn't give that movie enough credit, but I'm happy you're here for a movie that I hope you enjoy. Question mark?
I do. It's a weird one, but I do enjoy it, yes.
I mean, when was the last time you saw this prior to the podcast?
5 years ago.
5 years ago?
Yes, 2 days after I gave birth to my first son.
Oh.
Any particular reason?
It's a typical postpartum, watch, women who've just had babies love to watch Beetlejuice.
I would love to see a study of that. What is your post-pregnancy movie, Right? Beetlejuice, top 5, that's the one that really gets it.
Yeah, I was trying to get into the Halloween spirit. Because my son was born at the end of September, and then I was like, I need to feel like it's Halloween. I don't know
why not jump in the line with Beetlejuice?
Exactly.
Oh, that is fascinating. I'd figure it'd be a Disney movie, but Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice, yeah. I made sure that he was not facing the screen, because even though he was 2 days old, I was like, this is scandalous a little bit, right?
That is something I wanted to talk about with this movie, because I haven't seen this since middle school, so...
Oh, but Blue Velvet, you'll just watch over and over again.
Huge fan. But yeah, I haven't seen this movie in forever, and I forgot how, kind of dark and a little raunchy.
Dirty. Yeah.
Yeah, this movie's... Yeah, dirty's a great way to put it. This is, kind of a dirty, kind of a dark movie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but Blue Velvet is just,
wholesome family
walk through
fun.
the forest,
Wholesome family fun.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was kind of taken aback, because I remembered this being, a kid's movie.
I had the same experience when I watched it 5 years ago, because I had seen it a bunch as a kid, remembered it as a children's film, and then when I watched it as an adult, I was like, my God, I can't believe my parents let us watch this so much.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the movie talks kind of openly about suicide. It talks kind of Beetlejuice is a whole can of worms of R-rated stand-up material right there.
Right.
And there's this whole weird kind of oh, everything's these bright pastel colors and death and afterlife, and it's this is really gruesome. There's the guy who's flattened out from a truck, and I'm that's like nightmare material. This is just kind of weird, but
dude was just trying to do his job.
Was trying to do his job.
I think it's the gruesome aspect. It's just so over the top that it comes back to comedy, right? Which is, throughout the entire film.
Yeah. But I mean, we were kind of taken aback by it. But what about you, Becky?
Oh no, this is normal. I watch this twice a year.
Oh, so you never had the whole, I haven't seen this in a while, this is weird?
I used to watch the animated series.
Oh, God.
Oh, I remember that, actually.
When the animated series was what, the mid-90s?
It came out 89, a year after the film.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
God, because I think I vaguely remember watching it as a little kid, but I don't really remember much about it.
Yeah, it wasn't, too based off of the movie. It was their own adventures. They'd bring in a couple little Easter eggs here and there, but oh yeah, I lived for the animated series.
I saw it a few times, as a kid. Just it aired on TV, right?
Yeah, it did.
So
where else would it have aired?
I mean, YouTube back in the 90s.
90s YouTube. Hear that dial-up.
You miss it every now and then.
No, that's how I know you didn't live with real dial-up. I lived with real dial-up, all right? I remember the screeching noise when the phone...
You're younger than we are, Dean.
I know.
Yes, and I lived during and I remember real-ass dial-up because we didn't lose dial-up till 2004. Our family was poor, all right? But yeah, but Beetlejuice.
We just looked at each other oh, not in our family.
Yeah, rich. I'm talking to rich girls over here. Oh, rich girls here.
So rich.
Having doors that lock and shit. Ooh.
I don't have like many doors in my house that lock. Actually, I
Fucking
think
rich-
one door in my house locks to this day.
Rich girl over here. Rich girl.
You just
like,
won't lock your door.
She's like, I trust my neighborhood so much I don't have to lock my doors. Ooh. But yeah, so but yeah, Beetlejuice.
Weren't you saying that there was an intruder in your backyard last night and you were really worried and ready to get the gun and then it was the cat?
It was my cat. That is accurate. But okay, it was like the middle of the night. I was woken.
Do you have a regular cat, Dean? Because I feel like you would have like a mountain lion.
I have a
as
few
pet.
cats, all right? But I heard barking in the middle of the night. I looked out my window to see, what hoe is all this noise? And I see this figure on top of my back fence, and I'm like, let me go get the gun. And
that was toddler size, apparently.
we have a big cat.
The cat isn't that big.
It's a big cat. And then I saw it. It's like, oh no, it's just the cat. Let me put the gun away and go back to bed. But
wow.
it was fun. It was fun. But Beetlejuice.
Yes.
So again, this is one of your like everyday kind of like always remembering it like kind of movies.
Yeah.
This movie's never fallen out of memory.
Never.
All right.
Modeled my life after Lydia.
So weird. So weird. I mean, you didn't model the bangs though.
No, that's a lot of work.
It's requires dedication.
Dedication might hurt somebody.
A lot of hair gel.
Yeah.
Winona Ryder has a look in this movie.
Yeah, she is the look.
She
is the moment.
She is the sad girl.
She is our sad queen in this movie.
Yes.
This is her breakout movie, right? Because this is like super early for her, right? Because she does this in like 88, because that's when this movie comes out, and I think she does Heathers the same year, like later on that year. And
is Heathers the same year?
I think Heathers is the same year. I think it comes out like right after this, and those two movies basically launch her into like stratosphere, right? Because like this for Winona Ryder, and then also for Michael Keaton, because he was like kind of on a downward for his career, and then this like blows him up. Also for Tim Burton, because this movie
is his second film.
Is his second movie, but this became like his calling card. Like Pee-wee's Big Adventure got him into the door, but this movie really is like, oh yeah, you're like a real director with real vision. Like you're more than like Pee-wee.
More than Pee-wee.
You're bigger than Pee-wee, kid.
Hey, Pee-wee's great. I love Pee-wee.
But
R.I.P.
I know. Dude, I was so heartbroken when he passed.
Yeah. Her first movie was Lucas. I don't know anything about that film from 1986.
But you were right. Heathers was the same year as Beetlejuice.
Solid year for Winona Ryder.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had another movie that same year, 1969. So 3 movies in 1 year.
She was 17 years old, I think.
Not bad. Not bad.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about like Beetlejuice, because this is like Gina Davis is about to become like really, really big after this, because she does like The Fly the year before, and then she does this, and then she's gonna do like a bunch of movies up until like Cutthroat Island, and then it's over. This is Alec Baldwin's like first real movie.
Gina Davis was the first one to sign on. That was like, yeah, I want to be part of this project. Everyone had to be asked like multiple times, will you be a part of this? She was just like, I'm in, let's do it.
Gina Davis is game for anything.
She is.
But again, the cast of this movie is just kind of fascinating to me, because like, again, Alec Baldwin's like the male lead of this movie.
Young Alec Baldwin.
Young Alec Baldwin, when he still had like a normal sized head and you can consider him attractive.
It's always such a mind flip when you watch. You're like, wow, you're really attractive, and it's like, oh, time.
You know what the future holds.
I've seen the future.
But yeah, like the cast of this is just like kind of wild, right?
Mm-hmm. Catherine O'Hara.
A lot of return cast members for Tim Burton. Because I mean, he, like David Lynch, likes to use same actors.
Otho, is that his name?
Otho, yeah.
Glenn Shaddix.
Shaddix, yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's also in, isn't he in Ed Wood?
He's in Nightmare.
He's in Nightmare. He plays the mayor, I think, in Nightmare, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, again, this is just one of those fascinating things. But like, I guess like the real, a really good conversation starter though is, what are your thoughts on the Tim Burton style? Because I feel Beetlejuice is the Rosetta Stone for the rest of his career. Every movie he's made is either like, I'm trying to do something different than Beetlejuice, or I'm trying to lean into the Beetlejuice aesthetic.
Well, I'd say, I mean, so I was surprised when you told me that he did Pee-wee.
That it's a little different, right?
Yeah, but then when you look at like his other films, like Beetlejuice, like you're saying, is kind of a good frame of reference. I know it came after, but also like Ed Wood is a good frame of reference. His style is kind of like merging like, I don't know, gothic emo-ness or just like the, morbid things with humor and absurdity a lot of the time.
It's like German expressionism meets Disney quiche.
Mm-hmm.
That's Vincent.
Oh,
yeah.
What is it? That was his the short film that he made.
Mm-hmm.
That was like his first like real thing.
Vincent Price, right? Is it?
It's narrated by Vincent Price.
It's narrated by Vincent Price. It's about a boy who wants to be like Vincent Price.
He wants to be like Edgar Allan Poe.
Okay, and it's stop motion, right?
Stop motion, yeah.
Yeah. What year was that?
Let's see. What year?
It's
was
before
Vincent?
Nightmare Before Christmas.
It's before this movie too, and I think it's before Pee-wee, so it might be.
Because that was like a thing. Tim Burton was like, he wanted to be like an animator. He
Yeah,
wanted to
'cause
work.
he worked
for
for Disney, right?
Yeah, he worked for Disney for like, what is it? Not Thief in the Collar, Black Cauldron. I think was like he worked on that movie. That was like one of his first real like major gigs.
Vincent was 82.
82? Okay, so it's like 6 years before this. But yeah, it's like his movies have like a very like, even when they're live action, they feel kind of animated, kind of cartoony. Like we see that in Beetlejuice with the afterlife stuff, the flattened out dude, and like you mentioned, everything has this kind of heightened goofy quality to it,
And you were right. He did want to be Vincent Price.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's like the cap.
There it is, yeah.
I haven't watched it in a while.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
What? You've never seen Vincent?
Fun. It's a fun one.
It's 6 minutes.
I mean, like, big surprise. Tim Burton is not like my guy, honestly. Like, I've enjoyed a couple of his movies, but I'm not going out of my way to watch a Tim Burton movie. I'm not a stan. No, I think Tim Burton has definitely made some pretty bad movies in his career. I'm not one of those people who's like, the whole filmography is perfect. I'm not one of those people.
I did not like his adaptations of like Alice in Wonderland or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory personally.
Yeah.
I thought those were really flat.
Those movies are like, they feel like cheap imitations of like what a Tim Burton movie would be, and it's so
like a knockoff.
Yeah, they feel like knockoffs.
But he's directing it.
Yeah, like those movies I didn't like. Oh, when he did the Planet of the Apes movie.
Oh yeah, I don't
thought
like that one.
That movie was like actually just bad. And then didn't he do like a Dumbo movie that no one likes? He did
Dumbo, yeah.
Did he do Big Fish?
He did, and I actually really like Big Fish.
I really like that one. That's actually probably one of my favorite Burton films.
Same. Well, we have common ground now.
There we go.
Yeah, that is
trying to rebuild the
relationship. Yeah. But yeah, like Big Fish is probably my favorite Burton movie, and I think that's because the weird aesthetic is very like what's the real world and what's like the storytelling world, because the aesthetic is very like controlled. Whereas in Beetlejuice, it's just kind of all over the place. Like you get this weird sense, like even when the movie opens, when they're flying over the town and it's like this,
you think you're maybe looking at a real town,
and it turns out, oh, it's a model, and then you see Adam and Barbara, and they're like they look like a 50s like Norman Rockwell painting, but it's taking place in the 80s, right?
Yeah,
the time's never specified, but yeah, most likely the 80s.
I think that this is a really interesting point, because Barbara and Adam and their whole house and their whole town is kind of like a parody of some kind of like American country like idealism, right?
It looks like an Andy Griffiths thing. It looks like this kind of
like a set.
yes. Nothing about it looks real, and I guess it makes sense when we realize, oh, it's all a model. But even when they go into town to pick up paints from the hardware store. They have the old man sitting outside the barber shop just talking, and he's like, everything just feels like
a stereotype.
A stereotype, yeah.
But you're dying to be the old man that sits out in front of a shop just rambling for hours.
And getting ignored by Alec Baldwin? Well, I can do that now.
You could.
It's better that you do. You might actually survive.
Maybe. That's
Shots fired.
I was wondering when you'd bring it in.
I was waiting for him to do it. I was like, oh God, he's going to mention it.
That was irresistible. Like,
I mean, that is like a real deal
tragedy.
thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's Toad's his fault, in my opinion. But anyway.
I mean, it was a lot of people's fault. But yeah, the whole thing is like, the movie opens and, we get to see this like idealized, hodunk, happy-go-lucky, married couple.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, we got to this house, we're having our vacation, doing like some renovations. And then they die like 4 minutes in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because that dog.
Because of a little dog.
The dog, they swerve away to get so that they don't hit the dog, and then the dog's the only thing keeping them like from falling over into the river, and the dog's like, nah, fuck you, and then jumps off and they die. Which is also a cartoony thing about the movie.
Over the top, like absurdism.
Mm. But yeah, and then and then after this, they like get home, they find out they're dead, and we get like the first like real effect shot of the movie with the mirror.
Yeah.
Which is like really cool. The effects of this movie actually like hold up, both the good ones and even like the bad rotoscoping kind of holds up in this movie.
It works, like all of those scenes with the sandworms and also them just like trying to transform into like grotesque creatures. It looks terrible, right? But it's like you're saying, it works well because the whole thing is funny, comic, ridiculous, so
that's what this movie is.
kind of like Jim Henson films. Like, you're not wanting like puppets to look real. Like,
you don't want realism.
no, it's supposed to be like silly and, surreal to an extent. I also think that this, like Tim Burton's type of absurdity is kind of interesting in contrast to David Lynch, which we were talking about last time, because
I love how we're just going to keep harping back on
no,
this.
we're not, because he doesn't deserve to be discussed. But
you are horrible.
But on the topic of like surrealism and absurdity, Lynch is like an actual nightmare in more ways than one. And Tim Burton is just like, okay, let's take absurdity, surrealism, and just like make it hilarious. Like and make it like really stretch like the viewer's like suspension of disbelief. Because like you're saying, like we have this like setup with Beetlejuice, this like hunky-dory little couple, and then 4 minutes in they're dead because of a dog.
And then let's throw them into the afterlife and just be like, what is this? This isn't, wallpaper and Harry Belafonte records.
Okay, like
that's also very interesting. The music.
I love the music.
The music, I like the music too, but it is very weird that of the aesthetic of the movie is like, yeah, they're these ho-dunk couple that lives out in the middle of bumfuck Connecticut, and they
listen to
love Calypso.
Calypso's great.
Again, it contributes to the absurdism of it. You know what I mean? Like, it's so like jarring. That sort of, it clashes, right? So you're like, all right, I'm just going to go with it. I have to just go with it. I'm on this like weird wild ride of Beetlejuice.
There is a thing about like a culture clash in the movie because, what is it? They're this like ho-dunk kind of couple who's like, oh, we want a family, but we can't like have kids. And then who moves in but a family that, it's like Lydia and her parents, like what? Like that family shows up and they're like
the Deetzes.
The Deetzes. Thank you. I could not remember their name.
That's I'm like, we get it. They're a family.
Charles and Delia Deetz, and
from New York City.
And they are the epitome of like that 80s of the moment kind of yuppie couple. She's
the artist. He's the real estate tycoon.
Is he a real estate guy? I got nondescript businessman.
But he's into real estate. They're both like wannabes, like really trying to climb like the ladder of whatever it is, like art or business. And
my art is dangerous.
That is my favorite quote from this entire movie.
Delia Deetz is a vibe in this movie. And O'Hara is walking a fine line between annoying and hilarious throughout the entire movie.
I love Catherine O'Hara.
Oh, she's great. She's great in this movie.
I love her so much.
But like, you get the script for this and it's like you have to play the annoying stepmom, and she is like, all right, but I'm gonna make you love me, because she is so fucking over the top, and she's like she's a little ditzy, but you're like, but she's just so weird and quirky. You kind of like just get a
She's
vibe.
lovable.
She's a
She's
lovable
also
ditz.
stepmom. She's not Lydia's mom.
I thought I said that. She's the evil stepmom.
Did you say it?
Is she evil?
She's not evil.
See, it's
I mean,
actually
that art's
like,
pretty evil. It's pretty
her
bad.
art is satanic, but her ditziness is, I think, what makes her so like lovable and easy to embrace.
Yeah.
Right? Because if she were just like really severe and like, you know, punitive, you wouldn't like her.
It's different. It's different between ditzy stepmom and dumb stepmom. Like that. I think that's the
and
thing.
Also evil stepmom.
Evil stepmom. Yeah. Well, she's like not. She's not nice to Lydia. I don't think she's kind of dismissive of her. But like, I think that's an interesting thing how she's portraying the character, because I never feel she's like a villain or a bad guy. She's like, oh, she's into her own little thing, and you know, she's not really like mean. She's just kind of ditzy.
Yeah, also Lydia can hold her own, because Lydia is a child, but also more adult than her parents in a way.
Yes.
So you don't feel like she's a victim in this situation. At least I don't. Except when Beetlejuice shows up and is like, I will make a child bride of you.
Beetlejuice. Oh, Lord. I forgot how little Beetlejuice is actually in the movie. Like Michael Keaton is okay, I'm going to compare this to a movie and they are not the same, but it gives me the same like vibe here. You know how in Silence of the Lambs, you think Hannibal Lecter's in the movie for like most of the movie?
Nope.
And he has 15 minutes of screen time, but his presence is just so
It's
big.
the Jaws effect.
Yeah, you think they're in like most of the movie. This is the same thing here, where it's like, oh, Beetlejuice. You think he's in so much of the movie. I think he's on screen for 10 minutes. If that, maybe 15.
It's 15 or 20, somewhere in there.
I don't even think it's 20, because the movie's 92 minutes long, and he has 3 big scenes of the movie, I think.
Yeah, I think it's because it's titled Beetlejuice, right? That you're thinking it's going to be about him. But then it makes me wonder why they titled the movie Beetlejuice.
Oh, okay. I actually have.
You have the titles.
Get into
it. The original title of the movie was House Ghost.
That's so lame.
That was by Warner Brothers, right? They wanted.
Yes.
That.
So what happened? Because the script gets given to Tim Burton, because he just came off and doing Pee-wee. Tim Burton was like, oh, I kind of like this script, because the whole premise of the original movie was, okay, these couple die and they're gonna haunt their house and try and scare away the people that move in, because they're the house ghosts. But it was like a straight horror movie. Mm-hmm. Like Beetlejuice was supposed to be a winged demonic entity that was going to kill the Deetzes and take Lydia as like a straight up like child bride and take her to hell in the whole 9 yards. It was like basically Hellraiser. Like that was like the original concept. But Tim Burton was like, let's make this fun. And then they did a whole rewrite of it, make it a comedy. And then as they're like redoing it, they're like, the name also sucks, so we want to change it. And then Tim Burton suggested Scared Sheetless, because, ghost sheets, Scared Sheetless. And
it's awful, too.
He says he suggested it as a joke, and the executives thought he was serious. Everyone else said, no, Tim was very serious. And then eventually they came on to, all right, well, who is going to be the breakout character of this? And they were like, okay, well, the Beetlejuice character is funny, and they're going to be on screen, and it's just going to be like at least interesting when they're there, so they just name it Beetlejuice. And also at the time, Michael Keaton was probably the biggest star coming into this, because he had already done like Mr. Mom and Night Moves. He already had his breakout stuff, but he had been on like kind of a career decline since then. Because he was like, I don't want people to think I'm like the Family Man funny guy. I want to be like a wacky funny guy. And then he made 5 movies that fucking bombed. And then he still had like name brand recognition. So they were like, okay, Michael Keaton, big name above the poster. He's playing Beetlejuice. Yeah. And then that's how it became, the movie is titled Beetlejuice.
I mean, it was definitely the right move from like a marketing perspective because people are going to look at it and think, what is Beetlejuice?
Yeah.
And also his character does set the tone, even though like he doesn't have a lot of screen time, it sets the tone for the entire movie, which is he's this like grotesque, dark, but like hilarious, raunchy, freaky character, right?
Yeah.
So it, you know.
It all kind of comes together. Yeah. It also, I forgot how fucking horny Beetlejuice is in this movie.
He's disgusting. Like a woman's worst nightmare.
He assaults Barbara like the first time they meet.
Yeah.
Like just lays one on her, starts poking at her with a stick, trying to see up her dress, and
he gropes her.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is a children's movie.
It's so awful. The whorehouse, quote unquote.
Dante's Inferno.
Dante's Inferno. Girls.
I know I said it, but like this is one of the only things I have like issue with the movie is I don't know the objective audience here. Was this supposed to be a kids movie?
How? He drops the F-bomb, which I totally forgot about.
Where does he drop the F-bomb?
When he's like
when he kicks over the tree.
Yeah, and he's like,
"Oh, nice fucking model." Love that
That's
line.
my favorite scene.
It's a good scene,
and that's a blooper.
Is it?
Yeah, they're doing the scene. He kicks the tree, and the tree wasn't supposed to fall over. So when he yells, "Nice fucking model," he's yelling it at the set designer. And Tim Burton just thought it was so funny. He was like, "We got to keep it in."
That's like a thing. Like Michael Keaton improv like half of his dialogue in this.
No, 90%.
Was it 90?
90% of it was ad-libbed.
That is truly incredible.
Well, I know the whole, like the famous monologue where it's just like, well, what are your qualifications?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I studied at Juilliard, and then I went to Harvard Business School, and then I saw The Exorcist 167 times. Like that.
And it keeps getting funnier.
And it keeps getting funnier every time. That entire monologue is Michael Keaton riffing off the top of his head. Mm-hmm. That entire thing. And it's like the Beetlejuice like monologue, right? Because I didn't know this. Do you know Michael Keaton used to be a stand-up?
Yeah.
Makes sense because Beetlejuice is kind of a stand-up comedian.
This is like just a weird thing because, I know Michael Keaton because #Batman, which he does like right after this. But like, I didn't realize he was like a comedian. I didn't realize he was like a comic actor for like a decade before that.
And it took all that time to get him to Beetlejuice, which would turn him into Batman, and history is made.
Wild.
Truly.
But again, I need to know who is the objective audience for this? Because it's not for kids, right? Even though kids for some reason really attached to this movie. So like, was this like, edgy teenage girls? Excuse me, Miss Edgy Teenage Girls. Can you help me here?
We still a teenage girl over here.
You're like, I don't have 2 kids and a mortgage.
I wish I had a mortgage.
We weren't around when this movie came out.
No, not yet.
So we can hang on to that.
Yes, we can. Definitely not for children. Another thing besides like him being a pervert and the F-bomb is like all the sexual innuendo. I don't know. I think it's one of those things too that like maybe so many kids saw it because like some weird thing was happening in the 80s and early 90s where there was like parental supervision and discretion was just like thrown to the wind and they were like, whatever, like
it was the Blockbuster home video era where your parents didn't care what you watched because I can rent 5 tapes and it'll keep you occupied for like 10 hours.
Yeah, a whole weekend. Hopefully.
Yeah.
And yeah, you would just go into Blockbuster, get a box, your parents would look at the cover of it and be like, sure, knowing nothing about it, right?
It's cool, it's vibrant. Let's go with it.
Yeah, that was I remember famously Outlaw Josie Wales I took to school with me because that's a PG movie. Did you know Outlaw Josie Wales is a PG movie?
No.
Have you ever seen Outlaw Josie Wales?
No.
Oh, it opens with the Northern Yankees massacring a Confederate squad with a Gatling gun. That is the first 5 minutes of the Outlaw Josie Wales. There's tits in that movie. They're dropping the N-bomb in that movie. I took this to my elementary school.
I think you told me about this.
Yes.
He said it in a couple of episodes.
But yeah, because like my dad likes Western movies, and I was like, "Ooh, I want to bring a Western to school," because it was like bring a movie to school because like we have nothing to do. brought it
We
there.
have nothing to do.
We have nothing to do. Brought it, and my teacher was like, "Oh, Outlaw
We've
Joseph
learned
Wales.
enough.
I ain't never seen this movie. It's a Western. It's probably like those John Wayne Westerns. Oh, no
Mhm.
violence." Puts it in. We get to the part where it's like, their tits, and he's like, "All right, turning this off. Dean, you're in trouble. Go to the office. Like, we're not finishing this movie." But
I would have brought in Beetlejuice. Fun for the family.
Mhm.
But that was like a thing. Like, there was definitely an era where you could just go into a movie store, pick up a movie, and it was like, is this for kids? Check the back. It's PG. It'll be fine. That was like, Beetlejuice is rated what, PG?
I thought it was PG-13.
I don't know. I thought that maybe the whole swearing.
Oh, it is PG.
Oh.
Oh, the 80s were a
Like
wild time.
literally,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what I'm saying. It's like you have the Goonies with the Goonies has plenty of curse words in it, and it's like a kids movie, right?
But yeah, one of the greatest kids movies
Yeah,
ever.
that's a fun
So there
movie.
you go. Things were just crazier back then. I think it's literally just
Different times.
Who was the audience? Anyone who would watch the film.
Weird goss. Tim Burton was making movies for his people.
He was building a cult following.
He was building an empire.
Yeah. He was just like, oh, these people don't exist yet. I'll make them.
I mean,
Or gather them if they do exist.
Tim Burton is like the most successful cult film director of all time.
I
'Cause
think
all of his movies feel
so. Yeah.
all of his movies feel like they should be these like, oh yeah, this came out and it bombed, but no one knows about it. But this, like, we've claimed it as the fandom. But like, all of his movies make like a shit ton of money, are critically lauded. Like, this movie like cost $15 million, made $75 million.
Yep,
It
Mhm.
like it won an Oscar
it did.
in like yeah,
It's an Oscar-winning film.
For what?
It was
makeup.
Yeah.
Academy Award for makeup.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah, this movie, Academy Award winner, makes like 3-4 times its budget. Also, it's beloved by audiences right away, and everyone's like, Beetlejuice, I got this great cult film for you. It's not a cult movie. Everyone knows about Beetlejuice, but it feels like a movie that should be like Monster Squad, like that's passed
Mhm.
around on the playground, right?
That's another good one you gotta watch.
That's a real cult movie. That
is.
is the realest of real cult movies. No one fucking knows about Monster Squad.
I don't know about it.
I'm a proud member of the Monster Squad.
But yeah, it's just, I don't know. There's like an aesthetic to like a lot of his movies that feel like they should be like these weird cult relics of the 80s, even though they're like not.
Like obscure and unknown. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's just telling us that Tim Burton is like the internet before the internet. He's like memes before memes. He's like
He's a
touching.
genius.
He's touching on something within the human spirit that like wants to be known and understood, right? This
Well,
is, like,
you're digging deep.
Super deep. Yeah.
You're digging so
He's
deep on
touching
Tim
the
Burton.
goth inside all of us and is like, come on. Come out.
Give in to the goth. Yes, your
Yeah.
life is a dark room.
Fly your goth flag high.
Okay.
Just saying.
He
My parents went to go see
is-
this, and then 2 years later, I was manifested.
Yeah, there you go.
Is Lydia a little too goth for this movie? Because when she said my life is a dark room, I rolled my eyes so hard I thought I gave myself a stroke.
I mean, you're always
all
stroking out. What are you talking about?
It's
She gets really defensive when I come at Lydia like this.
Don't be coming at Lydia. I'll show you some of his text messages where I'm like, "Are you okay? Are you having like a legit stroke?" And he's like, "My thumb's too big for the keyboard."
You always trying to.
You need a bigger phone. dude.
She's throwing me under the bus because I'm coming at her girl.
Don't be coming at my woman.
That's fair. I think it's all tongue in cheek. Like it's supposed to be funny. Like when she's sitting there penning her suicide
I
note,
love
and
that.
she's like, "I am alone. I am utterly alone." You know, she's scratching it out.
I will have thrown plummeted.
That is a weird. That's another weird thing about this movie is there's like really just like open talk about suicide in this movie, and like Lydia is like, I just want to be dead.
And then you
Why?
have-
Because it looks so cool.
And then you have Barbara and, explaining to her, no, you need to be alive, don't do this. So see, there's some positivity in there.
Well,
It's child friendly, right?
child friendly.
Exactly.
There's also Miss Argentina at the underworld
I
section.
love Miss Argentina.
Where she's like, I would have done something if I didn't have this little accident.
Mhm,
And you're like,
mhm.
oh, she's just like, she slit her wrist. Like, there's the
It's casual. Yeah.
Juno has like the slit on her throat when she's smoking. It comes out of her neck.
Which is a cool effect.
Yeah, it's a cool effect. But like, the whole underworld section of this is like a whole different movie. Are you okay?
I'm great.
All right.
You look
You
like you're
guys are
falling-
looking at me like
You look like you're falling
So
asleep.
what about it?
Yeah.
Because I was at Disneyland from 8 a.m. until 12:30 a.m. yesterday.
Today.
Well, today, yeah.
Live-
Yeah.
I guess.
living your best life, I see.
We rode 24 rides. I have 2 children. Like that is, I was proud of myself.
Living the best life.
But
ever.
I'm also like, 2/3 present.
Well, I mean, we're trying to keep you there.
I'm
You know.
here. I'm here.
All
But
right.
yeah, I think we do have to talk about the underworld because the underworld is so much more vivid than the real world. Like in most Tim Burton movies.
Delia wishes she can make art as vibrant
Oh,
as the
hell yeah.
underworld.
Well, one thing that I thought was interesting about it was that, like, you have Barbara and Adam there, and you're wondering, why do they look so normal? Like, why is one guy has a shrunken head, one woman is severed in half, right?
Things happen.
And
All
then-
those dead people are like those one frame comic strips from like the Far Side, where it's like, oh yeah, they're waiting.
Oh,
on the
true.
camera. Yeah, they're all like these one frame jokes, and it's like there's so
Mhm.
much work going into these background characters.
You know what the weird thing was that I didn't pick up on until yesterday when I was doing my research?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in the underworld, they look, the way that they died.
Mhm.
Barbara and Adam, they drowned, but they're not wet.
No, totally.
Oh.
And Miss Argentina is the one who explains that to them, right? Because
Mhm.
they're like, why do we look the way that they do? But the way I saw it was that they're such boring people. They're so just like,
Milk toast.
absolutely, that like even in death, they're just who they are. Or maybe that's a comment even on their life. I don't know.
No, it was just they didn't want to have them wet throughout the entire
That's it.
the entirety of filming. They were just like, it's gonna be too much to either have them be wet or put stuff on them to make them look wet.
Alec Baldwin
Mhm.
would be mad.
And I was just like, it never fazed me because it's like, yeah, they're wet when they come home.
They try to
Mhm.
dry off. She lights her hand on
She
fire.
lights her hand on fire, and it's just like
Mhm.
it never fazed me that they're dry for the rest of the movie. It's like, oh yeah,
I was just trying to find meaning in it, of course.
That's why I'm like, I'm gonna take her down. and be like,
what does
I'm
it
like, there's no
mean?
meaning. It's just
I mean, you could still draw a kind of meaning out of it, you know?
You
The-
would.
Well, I mean, the meaning is that Alec
He
Baldwin
totally
didn't want his
would.
hair to be wet, you know? He's like, I'm trying to get
Mhm.
this floppy, cute 90s guy going on, you know? Come on. But yeah, like the meaning you could draw out of it is like they didn't want to be wet, you know? Or also like, yeah, they are so milquetoast and dull in their living life that even in
Mhm.
death they're like the most boring looking people in the underworld.
Another, like, a note on that is that, like, okay, are they even alive in real life? You know what I mean?
that's what I was gonna get to. That it feels like they're more alive in death than they were in life.
Yeah, they're like excited to vacation at home for 2 weeks. It's like, how boring can you be?
You don't like a
She's-
staycation at the spooky house?
I mean, not if I'm like putting up wallpaper and that's like the highlight of my vacation, right? It's like, or like working on my little model town. Like they're intentionally so boring.
They are a very specific kind of characters where they're
They're the Maitlands.
well they're painfully normal, but they're not
Mhm.
like all that relatable, right? Like they're like the most boring kind of normal. Like I don't know many people who are like, I built an entire scale model of the entire town we live in. You know,
Mhm.
it's mostly grass, right? Yes, because we live in a town with not a lot of houses.
Really, Mr. Warhammer?
Quiet, you. But yeah, like it's like they're very normal, but like I don't know how relatable they are in life. You start to relate to them on a human level once they're like dead, and they're like, we want to keep our house. God damn it!
No, I think you're right. And you're onto something important because also, like, look at their marriage. They're not newlyweds, right? Because they've been trying for a while to have children and they've been living in that house for not like they didn't just move into that house. They've been
No.
living there for a while because Jane is trying to get them so desperately to sell it.
Yeah,
And yet, even though they're not newlyweds, they're acting like newlyweds. They're like, when they're in the beginning, when they're like pulling each other back onto the couch and
they're
like,
having their super cute like, oh look how in love we are. I would be
Yeah.
ashamed if we died.
and like giving each other gifts before their like 2-week staycation. It's like it's just so like, again, over the top, ridiculous. Like,
Super
Yeah.
hodunk.
yeah, like it's parody of like the perfect, little married couple. And like nobody, again, it's not relatable. Nobody is actually like, is somebody like that? Am I just, do I have a terrible marriage? And then they're running down the stairs and like, to answer Barbara at the door. Jane.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's supposed to be ridiculous. They're not relatable. I don't know how much you really sympathize with them when it comes to their plight.
I eventually end up sympathizing with them with the whole thing of like, oh, well, this is like our house. Like we built this house and somebody's coming in and changing it. And there's like a vague idea there of, well, maybe it's not vague. Maybe it's a little bit more pronounced than this of, oh, once we die, everything we built together is going to be, washed away because somebody else is going to move in and like, tear it all down. And I'm wondering if that's a thing, like, because it's mentioned that, oh, they, it's not mentioned like directly, but it's like alluded to that they can't have kids, like, fertility issues or whatnot. And they find in Lydia like a surrogate daughter. And I wonder if that's something the movie's getting at is, oh, when you die, your kids carry on your legacy, not just your possessions. So I'm wondering if that's something the movie's trying to do, or if I'm reading way too deep into this.
No, I think that's valid. Because, they don't really talk about Lydia's mom, and I kind of had to look into it because I've always wondered. So originally it was going to be they got divorced, and her mom and younger sister that never made it to the movie stayed in New York, and Lydia went with her dad and her stepmom, and they're like, we don't like that. So we're just going to make it her mom died, and then that was right before the move. So that's why Lydia's kind of going through this mourning period.
This goth phase.
Yeah.
Is this all in the story by like Michael McDowell? Because I know that this was adapted.
It is, but I'm not sure if that was part of his or if Tim Burton rewrote it where it would be that the mom had just recently passed. And
did Tim Burton like do any of the concept, like the writing on this? Because I thought he just was directing it, and then there were multiple writers.
There were multiple writers, Michael McDowell and Warren Scarron. I'm pretty sure that's
and
a K.
Larry Wilson.
And Larry Wilson, I think, is the story by. Tim Burton came in, and when he like I think he dictated like, hey, I don't like this, change this, change that, but I don't think he like pen to paper. Yeah, I don't think he developed it. Like, it's a very weird thing because, again, like this was like an original script that was like a straight horror movie that eventually got turned into like a horror comedy, and then eventually got turned into this. So, it's I'm wondering, because I remember like Lydia was supposed to have a sister in this, and I'm wondering like if Tim Burton dictated that change, and that's where the theme came in of like, oh, well, the kids are your legacy, you gotta watch
feeling
out.
Utterly alone.
It's like, oh, you gotta, yeah.
And then you have Adam and Barbara that feel utterly alone, and it's kind of, they've found each other. They've turned themselves into kind of, this little family unit.
They create their own kind of family.
They do. It's a modern family.
Oh God, this is so corny, but maybe it's like home, like your family is your home, not the actual house, not the actual like structure which they're fighting over, right?
I mean, so much the movie looks so hodunk. Like you think that's there.
Love makes a home. It's like that's like every like sign at like Home Goods.
No, that's Hobby Lobby.
Hobby Lobby.
Home Goods is more cool.
Excuse me?
It's true.
But yeah, there's definitely like that, I think, is like a major theme of the movie now that we're going on about it, is like, oh yeah, because if they were like newlywed couple and it's like, oh, like they just haven't had a kid yet, then that's like different than, oh, they've been married a while and they can't have kids. And then Lydia coming in and being like, oh, I don't feel accepted by my parents because her parents are like not the same as her at all. And she finds like parental figures in
two dead people,
and it's like, oh, then and by the end of the movie it's like, oh, how'd you do in your math test, or oh
yeah, they've learned to coexist.
Yeah, they coexist, but they take on like a parental role to them, and it's like, oh, they kind of adopted the kid, and now their legacy is going to live on through Lydia kind of thing instead of this house, which is interesting.
It is. The house is also like a very important, obviously, part of this movie because they're fighting over it, right? And to Barbara and Adam, this is like, their house has kind of become their baby, become their child, developing it.
I mean, they spent 2 weeks at home just fixing it up and,
They
putting
don't-
wallpaper.
Right. It's their, like, even from the beginning before they die and everything else outside of their home turns into like a Dolly-esque nightmare. It's their oasis, right? It's like their sanctuary.
yeah.
They don't need to vacation from it. They want to be in it.
Yeah, because it's their anniversary that they're celebrating. So it's like, let's celebrate it at home.
Mhm.
Adam's like, you sure? I can't take you to, somewhere
saying?
tropical,
Yeah.
like Tahiti or Jamaica. And she's like, no, this is,
Mm-hmm.
my vacation. This is my happy place.
Yeah, their life, their marriage, whatever. And then there's the Deetz family. They're so great actually because what's his name? Charles is like, he's the stereotypical dad that Tim Burton loves to portray. Like it's the same in Edward Scissorhands, right? With like the father who's just like kind of oblivious, wants to be left alone, like
Just wants to listen to the game,
wants to watch some birds, like exactly.
He is,
Barbecue.
He's a sitcom dad.
Exactly. Again, a parody of like, your typical dad, your typical dude. And then you have his wife, who is also great, but like she refers to the house as like a hellhole, right?
What is it? And then she brings her friend Otho in to do the whole remodel, and they're just spray painting the walls, and it is like, how I cannot live here unless you let me express my art. I will wilt and die, Charles. Well,
if you don't let me
says,
gut out this house,
I will go insane and
Yes.
I'll take you with me.
one of the best quotes of the movie.
well, how about you do that to
Truly.
the rest of the house, but you leave this room, just this
Mhm.
room.
It's a nice office.
It's got bird watching equipment.
It's got a lot of books.
They're also like, I mean, obviously they're set up as completely antithetical to the Maitlands,
Yes.
but like also their marriage is the complete opposite, right?
Yeah.
They're just like kind of enduring and like bearing with each other rather than, giggling and like looking
In
into
love
each other's
and
eyes.
happy, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't get the vibe of a loving marriage. It's almost like
Absolutely not.
you get the vibe of a, well, we were both high status people in New York, so of course we got married because I'm rich and she's an artist.
It's
And,
just the most
you know,
advantageous partnership.
Exactly.
For both of us.
You know?
That's another thing about them too, is that like when they realize that there are ghosts in their home, their first thought is like, how can we capitalize on this?
How can we market it?
Uh-huh.
We can turn it into amusement parks.
Mhm.
Let the money roll in.
That is like that 80s consumerism culture that is like,
Mhm.
that makes for so many good
Wall
80s
Street.
villains. Oh, yeah. Wall Street knew what it was before, the 80s ended.
Mhm.
But yeah, like the Deets are just very it really does feel like the Deets thing, they are invading an ecosystem and like they're just transforming everything around it, and the whole movie is the Maitlands, that I got the word right. Maitlands like trying to expunge them from their like environment. It's almost a thing where it's like country living, city living. It's like, oh, all these
Mhm.
city people coming into our nice, hodunk town, bringing money and real estate and change and shit.
But it's interesting to see the change throughout the movie because we see not only Adam and Barbara change, we see the house change too. Everyone is evolving.
Oh, by the end of the movie, the house looks fucking disgusting. I hate the wallpaper.
It's so
Those
crazy
sculptures.
when the Maitlands come back into the house after talking to Juno,
Mhm.
and Barbara doesn't even recognize her home, and it's just like, yeah, it's like, what happened?
No, they're like,
It's
this just keeps getting weirder and weirder. And then they're like, oh, we're in our house.
Okay, because they do the remodel and the house looks like the grossest modern art exhibit I can imagine. The doors look like that stubbled marble, goo everywhere. The tables look like shit. Honestly, if I was an interior decorator, I would go against this completely. It just does not fit the vibe of the home.
And
Oh.
Dean is all about style.
I
All
know,
about
I know.
style. But yeah, like the whole house just looks like really gross. But yeah, I think that's around the time we also get the seance, which is like, honestly, like I think that's like the coolest part of the movie, like visually.
Well, I mean, one of the other cooler parts we missed is when they have the big dinner party,
Mm-hmm.
and we have, Barbara and Adam, where they're just like, we're gonna, throw our spin on it. And we get a Harry Belafonte dance party.
did they really think that would scare them off?
No, but I think it's one of the greatest scenes in cinema of all time.
I think it's definitely the most like iconic scene from the movie that people like.
Oh yeah,
And
When they
Tim
think of
Burton wanted to
Beetlejuice.
cut it.
really?
Yeah.
That is like
Yes.
their only real attempt at scaring them away that seems successful.
He thought it was going to be too cheesy, and then I guess test
Like,
audiences
what
were
the
like,
fuck?
film
That
is
Yes.
you know like it fits in perfectly to the
I know,
entire
I
like
know.
atmosphere.
I know we could have lived in a world without that scene, and
Oh,
it would have been a
God.
shame.
The movie would have bombed.
It would have.
Honestly, like you mentioned, like, oh, this is the most iconic scene in the movie. It really is. Like, I feel like people know that, like, oh, the dance party, you know, the all that.
You can't go to a baseball game without them playing Deo at least once,
True.
Yeah.
and it's like everybody knows
It's a cultural reset.
it is.
Like after this moment, music was different.
It was.
Film was different. Cinema had
Life
changed.
was different.
America was everything. America had changed after that.
And then we jump to the next big moment, which is the séance.
Yeah, well, I like the seance because Oath, like they got the book for the recently deceased, and they do the whole like, oh, we're gonna summon the ghosts so we can like get them to do our bidding and do like cool parlor tricks and shit. And it has that like green like backlighting, and they like Gina Davis like comes in and fills up the wedding dress that was empty, and then like she starts like fading away into like weird zombie form. Then Adam does the same thing, and it's like a really visually interesting sequence. And I think it's interesting that they come back dressed for a wedding, and then only way Lydia can save them is by getting married to Beetlejuice. And it's like, oh, that's kind of neato.
Well, because he sees his opportunity. He's like, oh, that's the only way to get me out of here.
I think he's lying. I
Well,
think
of
he's
course
like,
he's lying.
He's like,
Of course he's lying.
He's like, I just want a child bride
But he
because
could
I'm
see,
Beetlejuice.
he could see how
Worst.
attached he is to Barbara and Adam. So it's like, ooh, get me out of here and get me a woman at the same time. Let's go.
True.
Yasmin's gotta look.
Those probably are his motivations. No, I'm just thinking about like I didn't actually think about the fact that they're wearing their wedding clothes and then a wedding ensues or an attempted wedding.
Because that was the only thing that I guess Delia saved of theirs. Because they were like, we need pieces from them to bring them back. And then Lydia's like, well, good luck. You dropped off everything at Goodwill. And Delia's like, no, I saved their wedding outfits. So
Why did she save them?
I honestly, that might be one of those things where I might be reading too into it, but it might be a thing where even she was like, these people loved each other. I can't throw away their fucking wedding clothes. Like, that'd be a little too mean even for her.
I don't know. I'm just wondering whether there's any significance to this. I can like find anything in it, but
Well,
because we were talking about their marriages being very different, and now you're bringing up the wedding clothes, but I don't know. I haven't thought about it.
there has to be something there because that's a little too specific.
Mhm.
Because it's set up earlier in the movie where they find it in the closet or whatever. So, like, Delia knows they're there.
Yeah.
And she's thrown away everything else, but she doesn't throw those away.
Mhm.
And then there's the whole thing of, like, okay, well, Barbara and Adam's marriage is, like, really strong, but the Deetzes isn't really that strong. Or maybe not, like, that foundational, like, oh, we love each other, all that stuff. Like, it might be, like, a marriage of convenience. Or they might actually do love each other, but they're not, like, affectionate. Like, I don't get affectionate from
I
them.
don't think they do love each other. One, we know that it's a second marriage, at least for her father. And two, when Barbara and Adam are trying to scare them and they're dressed as ghosts, and Lydia's overhearing them moan, she's like, oh God, how does he, stand that woman? So I don't think...
I mean, the moaning is probably giving something away as to why he can stand that woman.
Right.
But sex joke.
Right.
Boom.
I get it.
I know it's
No.
flying over your head.
No.
I know you
No.
called out Virgin Mary last episode. This might be, weird to you.
She didn't call her out. She gave her a shout out.
Gave her a shout out.
I take every opportunity for that type of shout out. So, I mean, don't make me do it again, Dean,
Oh,
because I will.
your
But-
shout out your girl.
But I wonder if they even have sex, to be honest. I'm talking about
Like the
Charles.
Deets?
Yeah.
I would imagine that's probably they probably crossed that bridge before getting married and moving in together.
Well,
That's
yeah,
what-
no. Yeah, I'm not saying that they ever have, but I wonder if they actually do anymore. Like, they don't have any other kids
Mhm.
other than Lydia, who
Than
he has
Lydia.
from a previous, relationship. And I feel like if her parents were regularly at it, she would like kind of maybe recognize it more than just like some random ghost moaning, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Or maybe they're into ghost play. You don't know that.
Ghost play. Okay.
Okay.
We are digressing.
We are digressing. Well, it is if there is. I mean, the movie is horny as hell, right? So I feel there is a thing where it's like they're getting it right, but it is just a like the loveless marriage part. I guess going back to the thing like the Deets, is it a loveless marriage? Because I don't think it's loveless.
No, because he puts up with her.
Because
Charles puts up with her.
if you were in Charles' shoes, would you have left Delia long ago?
Maybe not, because she's just entertaining. But, or maybe, I don't know. I feel like it's more contractual. The relationship is contractual. Like when she threatens him about renovating the house, he's just like almost scared of her.
Mm.
And so he gives in to her. I don't know. I guess there are no hints that they have any kind of like romance or anything like that.
It's interesting you use the word contractual. See, I can speak English. Because that's basically the relationship that Beetlejuice is trying to create with Lydia.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, hey, I'll save them, but you got to marry me. And Lydia just is like, well, yeah, I guess that's fine.
I think it's also significant that she's wearing a like red wedding dress, because to me that represents like sacrifice.
The loudest wedding dress ever put to screen.
Truly. I don't know. It's like I immediately thought of blood, and I was like, oh, she's sacrificing herself as this like child bride to save, this couple who she cares for. I don't know.
I mean,
Maybe there's this whole thing that's like super deep about like marriage, family, children, but I haven't put it together. Let me just say that.
Yeah. I mean, I just think there's something significant there that they chose wedding clothes, and of all the things that they held on to, that was the thing that, the filmmakers made a point that, no, we're going to do the wedding clothes. And it could have just been a thing where, oh, wouldn't it be funny they're dressed for a wedding and there's about to be a wedding. It might not even be like that deep, but there's definitely intent there.
There's something there.
And then, we get the climax where Beetlejuice comes in and just cleans up for the next like 10 minutes, right? 5-10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We get our first Jack Skellington cameo.
Well, there's a Jack Skellington cameo.
There is. You missed it.
Is it when he becomes that like arcade game?
Oh,
not
is
arcade
it like
game,
a thing
but
on the
carnival game.
on the top of his head.
On the top of his head, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Also, like Beetlejuice's suit is kind of a precursor to Jack Skellington. Maybe
Jack's been trying to make an appearance since
He's
forever.
been trying to break through.
When we do actually talk about Nightmare, whenever that is, there I got thoughts on how deeply defined Jack Skellington was, but we'll get there. But yeah, the carnival thing, like I get, it's like really loud and wild, and I think this is probably how people remember Beetlejuice is, oh, he shows up and it's loud and wild and crazy, bombastic. And they generally forget that, oh yeah, this scene is a precursor to him trying to marry a child.
Yes.
Yes, people generally forget the second half of this scene.
And the dinner guests that were there, and they get shot through the ceiling, and we never see them ever again.
He killed 2 people. Beetlejuice,
I mean, like
ghosted 2 people.
I think this film just requires that from the audience throughout. It's just like, take my hand. You're gonna come with me.
You're gonna go
just
on a ride.
go with it, and yeah, that's what makes it what it is.
But what is Beetlejuice? Is Beetlejuice a good movie? Is it a weird movie? Was it a fun movie?
It's an entertaining movie.
Yeah, it's entertaining.
I love it.
5 out of 5 stars.
5 out of 5 every time.
Yasmin, final thoughts on Beetlejuice?
Final thoughts. I mean, God, I would love to talk all about like the afterlife and stuff, but that's a whole thing.
I mean, you got time. Because the afterlife is like a huge part of this movie that I feel is not in as much of it as I remembered.
It's also so memeable that it's like, oh, you died. Here, take this book, read it.
It's really like stereo instructions.
Figure it out.
I think I think actually the afterlife is, for me, the most interesting part of this movie, because you're wondering, like, what is the internal, like, logic that's going on? Like, death seems to be just as mundane as life. There's nothing transcendent about it, right? Like, again, you have a manual, a handbook.
It's bureaucracy.
Absolutely, like red tape. Just like when they go to the waiting room and, you know, Miss Argentina is like, oh, you just have to wait. And like, you know, you have a caseworker or whatever. Like, it's just like.
And what do you mean you forgot your book?
Mhm.
That's what you're supposed to do while you're sitting here waiting for your number. You
Right.
read your book.
Right.
Figure it out.
There's also a thing, and I think it's a throwaway line in the movie, where it's like, oh, you know what they say, if you kill yourself or commit suicide, you become a social worker in the afterlife. Oh. So it's like, that's like a thing. Like Miss Argentina, she's like, oh, I slit my wrist, and now I work as like a receptionist at the DMV, basically, for all of eternity. You know, and it's like, there's definitely a thing there where it's like, oh, you know, suicide is bad, Lydia, don't kill yourself. But there's a weird internal through line through the movie that the afterlife is not glamorous. Being dead isn't fun. It's like, honestly, kind of boring and dull.
Well, that's what Barbara says to Lydia. She's like, dying is not going to solve your problems, or it's not going to be like any better than living, you know. And Adam says that too. Like, it's not going to be a solution to your problems.
And even earlier, you know, when they first die, and he tells Barbara, he's like, well, we don't really have any more worries. And it's like, no, they've taken on a whole boatload of worries.
Yeah.
Beetlejuice, sandworms, caseworkers.
The sandworms are also a weird thing. Like, I don't, like, what is that supposed to be? Because like whenever the Adam and Barbara, when they leave the house, because like I guess the house is the confines of their haunting, when they step foot off the porch, it's just this vast empty desert. You described it as like Dali, like a Dali-esque surreal painting with like giant sandworms. Like, what is that? Just like the ether between life and death? Like, why giant desert sandworms?
Again, so much of this doesn't make sense. Like, again, what is the internal logic? Like, there's no like Barbara asks when they first die, like, where are we? Like, heaven, hell, like purgatory? Like, what is this space? And
this is also a very like non-religious look at the afterlife.
Yeah, there's like no God, no anything. It's just like and it's
more paperwork.
More paperwork, exactly. And there's no like their outcome has nothing to do with like how ethically they let their lives, right? There's no like pearly gates or like scales or anything like that. Although she does ask, like Barbara asks, is this a punishment when the Deetzes move into their house? I know, it's interesting. I understood the hellscape outside their home and the fact that it looks so surreal as maybe commenting on like how mundane their life is. Like, you described it as like a Norman Rockwell painting. So for these people, hell would be like a Dali painting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That would definitely be the polar opposite. Yeah.
And it's like we talked about the house being like an oasis or a sanctuary. So anything outside of that is like,
hell.
You know, hell.
Well, anything outside the desert or anything outside the oasis is the desert.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, see, levels here, layers, like an
Onions.
Exactly. But it is the afterlife is just. I think that almost works for the movie's favor. Is the internal logic of this movie? There is none. Like, every time, like, time works differently when they're dead. When they go to the afterlife, there's like, well, how long have we been gone? And he's like, oh, I just like stepped off the porch. You've been gone for hours. Or, oh, we went to go see Juno, come back. It's been 3 months. Like, there's no like, okay, well, how long do you step off? Like, what's the time equate to? Like, is it a thing like...
Time doesn't matter anymore.
There's no answers, really.
Yeah.
And I guess it doesn't need to provide them because it's just supposed to be over the top.
It's the difference between Tim Burton and Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan will spend 45 minutes explaining to you the weird internal logic of his dream world. And Tim Burton's like, bro, just fucking roll with it, man. Take this and just vibe. Like, that's Tim Burton.
I mean, she gets an A on her math test, and we get a cool dance party to jump in the line.
with the football players in the background.
Just dancing backup.
Like, why not?
Of course.
And Adam's perfected his ghost skills, so he's like, yeah, the whole house is gonna have a party.
I do. Okay, I think the ending is actually a lot of fun.
I love it.
It's like super cute, honestly.
It's super cute. Super kawaii.
Like super cute. Oh, like, oh my god. But yeah, so your now actual final thoughts on Beetlejuice.
It's fun. It's weird. It's, Tim Burton.
Would you call it a good movie? Would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, not for children. Like,
not for really small children. 10, easy get.
No, that's too little. No, but yeah, I'd recommend it. It's a fun movie. It's a good movie.
I'd say it's a good movie. Yeah,
it's definitely unique.
There's not a lot of movies like Beetlejuice. I'll give you that.
The bioexorcist.
Yeah. I think that's a point.
I also love that.
That's a point towards the movie. There's not a lot of movies like this. There's very few movies I can think of where the look at the afterlife is this hilariously mundane, and there's not a lot of people there's not a lot of characters like Beetlejuice that work that well.
Okay, one more boo fact before we end this.
Before you give us your final thought.
Because you lit the torch for me that I remembered this fact. So the bioexorcist, the commercial that Barbara and
the first
Adam
time we actually see Beetlejuice and he's giving the biggest huckster local TV
car
salesman advertisement.
That was modeled after the Cal Worthington car commercials.
Oh, really?
If you guys aren't from California, Cal Worthington was the biggest.
He's a huge car dealer in Southern California.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Tim Burton being from Southern California was like, hey, let's do that. So Beetlejuice on the cow and selling his shtick was based off of Cal Worthington.
I love it.
That is great.
Also because obviously okay, in the living world when you request an exorcist to come to your home, you're trying to get rid of demons, demonic activity. This is a bioexorcist, right? Getting rid of the living, and he's the furthest thing from a priest or any kind of transcendent spiritual or holy figure. So it's I love that sort of just turning it on its head.
Yeah,
he is he's a charlatan that is. He can
unholy.
He can do what he can do what he tells you, but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Can we please just mention this before we end? He says I will eat anything. What does he say? I'll swallow anything. I'll eat a cow. What does he say? I'll chew on a cow.
I'll chew on this cow. Heck, what? If you call right now in the next 5 minutes, you get a demonic possession for free. That's right, for free, ladies and gentlemen.
And he's even selling it when the Maitlands visit him, when they dig him up.
Yes.
And he's, ready to make them, Italian. But before that, he's like, hey, come on, we're making a deal here. And it's just the salesman is just so deep in Beetlejuice.
Again, going back to everything becoming bureaucratic, salesy.
Mm-hmm.
Not transcendent, not sublime. Death is just life.
He's still on that grind. Mm-hmm. Even in death, he's on that grind. Mm-hmm. What was Beetlejuice supposed to be in life? Because he looked... Okay, I know we've been trying to end this for 5 minutes, but how Beetlejuice looks, his design, because that's probably what won the makeup award, right?
It was 3 hours of makeup to put him in it, so... Yeah,
but how did that look? He looks like a clown.
He's lived through the Black Plague. He's been alive for dead alive for 300 years. He was Juno's assistant.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what was he?
Yeah. What was he?
Was he
looks
ever
weird.
alive? Oh, well, I don't know. I just thought he was some kind of weird
demon.
Yeah.
I mean, wait. So there's no angels or God, but there's demons. Or was he
There's no Mr. Beetlejuice and Mrs. Beetlejuice?
Was there a Mr. and Mrs. Beetlejuice? I don't know. That might be a mystery.
There must have been, because when he pulls out the wedding ring, there's a finger attached to it. And he says to Lydia, she meant nothing to me.
She meant nothing to me. She meant nothing to me, Arnon.
I don't know. I never thought of him as being previously alive, personally.
It's just one of those things where it's the design of him is so specific, where he comes off as a carnival barker. And he has an aesthetic of the carnival barker thing, selling it. When he actually goes to take care of the deeds, he turns into a merry-go-round. I don't know, like I get the vibe that in life he was this like turn of the century like clown carnival barker or whatever. You know, it's just very interesting.
Could be. When I was a kid, I always thought that, again, like,
he was Satan, yes.
I thought that he was never like, I didn't think of him as a human being or like ever alive. And in the opening, when you see that like disgusting spider, that huge, like almost tarantula like spider on the model.
Do you like how like
he
Alec Baldwin just
it
picks it
up?
up? He's like, oh hey little guy. And I'm like,
no,
that's not
like,
a little guy.
He says that's a big fella. And then he takes him to put him outside, and the spider bites him. I thought that was like is that Beetlejuice? Because he's like hanging around on the model. And then remember, I don't know, maybe I'm looking into this too much, but remember when
No.
Dean, I could like say the same for you, trying to like make meaning of David Lynch films when there is nothing.
There's so much there.
Yeah. Remember when he calls the fly over and he's like, hey, you, like he's trying to eat it? I was like, is he the spider? Is he like the bad omen? Has he been hanging around? Like, does he have some kind of like power over this?
Oh, was he the one who set the whole thing up so that they would die?
That was like, I wondered that, because also in the when you see the opening credits and you're like flying over this town and then you realize it's a miniature, then you see the spider, then they have this like absurd, ridiculous, death 4 minutes into the movie. I don't know. I wondered whether he had more control over the whole thing, whether it was kind of like he was a puppeteer. Yeah.
I think there's something there, honestly, because, like him just like taking the fly, right? Because that's like a very specific thing, and that draws parallel to the spider. But also it's like, oh, where do we see the spider? It's like on the house. It's in the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like on the model
on
or
top
whatever.
Of their house. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, he's going to be this thing that's just going to be like lording over them for the rest of the movie. It's this whole thing where it's like watching the movie, you're waiting for the guy on the fucking poster to show up. Where's Beetlejuice going to show up? And it's like, well, he's right there. He's the first thing you see in the movie. He's the spider.
Yeah. I thought it was like a bad omen, possibly him. This like, specter that's like looming over everything. I don't know.
I think it's neat. All right, so finally, the end of the Beetlejuice episode. So I think we all can agree, really good movie.
Yep.
Would recommend.
Yep. Would recommend.
But yeah, what are we watching next week?
You could go to the Film Club podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube.
That's right. You can go to our YouTube channel, The Film Vault. That is The Film Vault on YouTube. You can go like, comment, subscribe to all of our fun slideshow versions of this, because eventually Dean will upload the video version of this podcast.
Yay!
But if you want to follow us on social media, you can go to
the Film Club podcast on Instagram, where we post daily stories, upcoming episodes, and random adventures we go on.
And Yasmin, do you want to give a shout out, or maybe
let everyone know
shout
out to the Queen of Heaven and Earth, the Blessed Virgin Mary? No, I have nothing to plug, Dean. I'm just here.
You can always shout out, the Virgin Mary. That could be your shtick.
That's what I've got to do,
Hail Satan, all that stuff.
Oh my God. This is not Rosemary's Baby.
No, he loves that movie.
Have you ever seen Rosemary's Baby?
I love Rosemary's Baby.
It is so good. It
is so good. The first time I saw that film, I rewatched it like 5 times or 6 times in the same year, because I was just like, this is amazing.
Have you ever seen Rosemary's Baby?
Haven't.
Oh my God, Becky.
I mean, they're going to be showing it at Hollywood Forever, so
rectify this immediately.
I am not seeing Rosemary's Baby at a cemetery.
Why not?
It's scary. It's just, yeah.
They're going to be showing Halloween there too.
I'm here just for the pleasure and the joy of being in your company.
All right, so shout out to the Virgin Mary and to Rosemary's Baby. And
yeah.
With that, everybody, we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.